USA. Northwest winds 20 to 30 knots. Wind waves 3 to 5 feet. West swell 7.
So the crew's all volunteering today, and there's people working behind us bolting down hardware. But I wanted to take a few minutes to explain the electronics that we're going to be using on the boat for the Transpac race. Just as far as the architecture of this goes, this boat never had a nav station. In a race like the Hawaii race, they were using a sextant and reducing the sights that they got to lines of position and putting them on the chart to get their position. They do that at least twice a day. So now it's all digital and all working off of satellite information. We had in this boat, when we first got it, an old radio that was a crystal set. They actually used crystals to get the frequencies. Now it's completely digital. Starting with our first thing, which is a VHF, we're all required to have a VHF for the race. This one is an ICOM unit. It's a 504, and what it does is it's linked to another piece of equipment right next to it, which is a GPS AIS combination. This is sort of a standard unit. Everybody seems to have one on a boat. I think everybody's pretty familiar with that. The AIS unit this is a Class B. There's Class A, Class B, and Class C. The Class A's are the commercial units that go on the bigger ships. They broadcast at a different strength than the Class B's. This is they're like 25 to 50 watts, I think, and then these are doing about 5 watts. As an example of the kind of information that your AIS will give you, when you see the target, if you see a target on here and you want to identify it, there's a collision alarm. That's always good to look for. You go to the next display. It'll give you a listing of the boats that are closest to you and then further away. So I'm just going to scroll down. Here we have so many contacts that it gets hard to kind of figure it out, but I'll pick one out. And we'll go to the Sandra Hugh and enter the Sandra Hugh, and she comes out as a Class A, which is a commercial vessel. Gives us our MMSI number, name of the boat, the call sign in case you want to call this out, which it'll do automatically. And then you can get additional information by rolling down. 0.3 nautical miles gives a position of these coordinates of the boat at this time. Speed over ground is 0 at the moment. Course over ground is 280, which without a speed really is irrelevant. And she's 2.8 nautical miles away, bearing 178. This gives you details of the height of the antenna, the size of the vessel. So her length is 24 meters. The beam is 12 meters, and she's 4.9 meters deep. The antenna location is 12 meters off the water on the height, or 12 meters back from the bow. Her height on the antenna is listed as 12 meters, and then she's 6 meters to the side, each side of the 12-meter beam. So she has an antenna that's centered in the vessel, and it's 12 meters from the bow, 12 meters from the stern. So you can go to the next page, and it now says it's underway using its engine, and the type of ship is it's a 52-foot tug. So at any rate, its destination is San Francisco Bay Ship Assist. At any rate, that's the sort of thing, the kind of information this thing gives. So we can return to our display mode. We can go back to the contact sheet. You can actually scroll in and out with this. You can see, you can get to where you have 3 nautical miles showing, and you can see what's in this thing. And as you scroll out, you get even more boats, more concentrated. And as you go down to 1/8 of a mile, there's only the stuff that's in the harbor here. And so here we would get some of the tourist boats that are over at the hotel, and maybe an occasional AIS-B unit from another sailboat here in the harbor. But as you open it up to a wider range, we start getting ships all over San Francisco Bay. So there's a lot of use to this tool. Again, over here, if you wish to call that ship, you can do it directly. You can select it, and you can then call it off of your VHF. Now, the other thing you can do with all these contacts, since it's a little small screen, you get back to this little target here, you can actually take all this information through another connection of the NEMA connections that everybody hears about. You can link that over to your chart plotter, and all those positions in this will show up on your chart plotter. So you have another reference. It's a little clearer and a little easier to understand. I'll show you a few things it does. This is the world maps. We're going to get the more detailed maps, of course. We've already plotted a course to Hawaii, and it's showing us how far that is. So we came up with this track, and we used the little tool here, which is the little target bullseye, and we created a waypoint right off Diamond Head, and it came back that the distance was 2,078 miles. So this is sort of the state of the art. The interesting thing is we also got a handheld, which we're required to get, and it additionally has all the same stuff that the ICOM radio has as far as the AIS targets. So you can be in the cockpit and working with this and being able to see these contacts. You can also try and call. Now this is not a very powerful radio. This is all low power 5-watt stuff, but it'll allow you to see a ship and confirm that the ship knows you are there and is avoiding you, or you can avoid them. So great pieces of information to have. We chose not to go with radar at this time because we're trying to keep the boat light, and we didn't feel we needed it for this race. This is a great deal of information. Now, in addition to that, we have our single sideband. And this has been a learning curve here, just the installation of the single sideband. And what's different about this from the VHF? The VHF is a very high frequency. You're really limited in range to how far you can see on the horizon, or at least your antenna can see. So our antenna is at the top of the mast, so we might have a 20 or 25 mile cone away from the boat that someone will pick up on our VHF transmissions. On the other hand, the single sideband is more like a ham radio. It's a high frequency, but not a very high frequency. It has more skip power, so it's also being broadcast at 5 times the power of this unit. So what we can deal with here is this can bounce. So depending on the nature of the atmosphere, this bounces off the ionosphere and can go over the horizon. And it can go thousands of miles. So if you have the correct frequency and you have the right weather conditions, you get much more range working with a single sideband. Other than that, the way this system is set up, it's standardized channels, so it works much like your VHF. It's just got much more power. The actual control unit here is fairly small, but back under the cockpit here is a black box. That's the heart of the system. The antenna cable runs back to an antenna tuner that fine-tunes the signal before it's put up the backstay. And we're using a wire inside the synthetic backstay as our antenna. So we have a big antenna. It's at the right vertical angle. It's going to put out a very broad signal and very powerful signal, a type of radio wave that will travel much further than the VHF radio stuff will. So that's our combination. Under the Transpac, we have to use the VHF for safety reasons, and the single sideband we're going to use for communication to the race committee. And in fact, we have to take it a step further, is that we're going to get a modem, and that connects into the black box, and that allows us to work with our laptop, and we can compose emails on sail mail, give them our position, and then email them to the race committee. It also allows us to receive email, which is a great function. And there's no real charge for that. Sail mail is a subscription service. It's basically a co-op of people trying to maintain the sail mail system. I think it was about $300 for the year. And it's a great service. It's a sort of a private email service. One other thing we're doing is I'm using one of my older GPS units that I really like. What's nice about it is so simple. We're actually going to use it up here in this bracket, and this is in the event of somebody going overboard, we're going to be able to just hit this and locate a waypoint, and it instantly starts showing you sort of a highway map of how to get back to that location. Our safety inspection, we went over some of the gear that we're required to carry, and we have these inflatable life vests. In this case, it has a safety jack point, tether line, but we're also including a AIS, this one by McMurdo Company. It sits in a little packet on your belt, like so. And if you go in the drink, you pull this out and lift up this tab, pull the safety off of it, pull the cover off of it, and it'll immediately start broadcasting an AIS signal with a special icon that shows up on your AIS machine, and it'll show up on your chart plotter as well. So if you do lose visual contact with somebody in the water, you can rely on your chart plotter and your AIS system to pick up this signal and have a much better chance of retrieving that person. Now, emergency calls. What's nice about this is all the DSC system, digital selective calling. If you want to make a distress call on your VHF, you just lift this tab and hit it. We have our MMSI number registered in here, so the thing becomes basically automatic at that point. With that MMSI number, other people know not only that somebody's in distress, but they know who they are, and it will also give them all the GPS information about where you are. So they have details of the boat, they have an absolute perfect location for you, and it does this automatically. So you can then go in and put a distress call out on top of that. And in fact, for the crew, anybody who has to do this, we have our emergency radio procedures for calling out a mayday. And they just walk down through this. We give our call sign. We try and repeat this location and try and give as much information about how many people are aboard and what the nature of our distress is. Exactly the same thing is available on the single sideband. So you turn the single sideband on, you pick one of the distress channels, you pull this up, hit the button. It also has our MMSI number registered in it, which gives everybody the information about the boat. But it's also going to be linked to one of these GPSs so that when it broadcasts, and again, we get a much larger area of coverage with this, that a ship that could get to us within a reasonable period of time would pick up on the single sideband DSC. Short of that, you take your EPIRB and you get in your raft and wait for help. So you're trying to do everything you can to make sure you have the communication. It's nice with this that you can also do, through a subscription service like SailMail, you can do emails and receive emails. My understanding of it is as we tap into the system through our single sideband, we'll get into the SailMail. There's sort of an address for that. When it recognizes us, it will download all waiting emails to your laptop, and it'll also pull up all the emails that you have waiting to go out. In addition to that, you can pull down weather maps. So there are some weather programs on here, and we have a special antenna called a DIRA antenna, which will allow us to receive WeatherFax information. It's a very simple plug from the plug on the black box into your laptop, and it'll give you all the weather data from a number of different sources. So now that we have our weather information downloading onto our laptop, we can compare that to the little weather station that we're carrying on the boat. Now this gives you temperature and humidity, which is relevant and important data, but it's really important to us is the millibar range of the high pressure. So that tells us where the pressure bands are above us, and then we can compare that to how strong the high is. What's the millibar in the middle of the high? And we can see where we are on the rings and really compare that and use it as one of our navigational tools for the race. So we want all this data, we need all this data. Now this has been a big learning curve because all this stuff is changing so fast and there's so many competitors in it. They're introducing new models. You just have to spend some time looking at all the key features and learning the terminology. And what I've told you is just the beginning of it. This is about the best we could do to find a place that allowed us to utilize the icebox the way it was intended, to lay out a chart or a plotting board, and give us all, a safe place to look at all the electronics. So that's been the layout. We still have some wiring to do. So great stuff, great tools. A little intimidating when you get started, but certainly going to make it a lot of fun to have accurate navigational tools and communication tools. So I'm looking forward to that part of it. Now, if we, for some reason, have a total failure, lights out situation, we actually have paper charts for the entire voyage and alternative routes and alternative harbors. So we can turn on our little ICOM here, and it will give us our latitude and longitude from our GPS. So if I hold it up to the window, it'll tell us exactly where we are at any given time, and when we can go back to the traditional way of doing things and plotting it on a paper chart and then figuring out our magnetic course to the destination. So a lot of good safety tools, a lot of simple backups that we have. It's just really wonderful stuff, and it's a learning curve, and everybody that gets into it enjoys it, but it's trying to understand it when you're starting out is can be a little bit overwhelming. We'll see. Should be an interesting race.